Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Good Enough Chats. My name's Dan and I'm your host today, and I'm joined by James. James, how are you doing?
Very well, very well. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. It's I don't know about where you are at the moment, but right now it seems to be switching from winter to summer within the space of about 5 minutes. We had snow yesterday. I know,
Okay.
right? And now I'm feeling like I've definitely overdressed by wearing a jumper and sitting out in this sauna. But apart from that, so if you see me wilting at all, it's because there is enough air in the room. It's no reflection on the conversation. Um, James, please, could you do us the honour of introducing yourself? Could we have your full name, your age, where you're from, what you do for a living, home life, and also your favourite flavour of crisps?
Yeah, no worries. So, James Lambert. Where do I live? I live down on the south coast, in Worthing. What do I do for a living? That's a really interesting question, and I'll try to keep it very succinct because I do a few things, but primarily there are two main focus areas for me. Number one is I run a business called Engage to Succeed, and the strapline of Engage to Succeed is I help people to love their life more every day. Very simple. And I work with organizations and with individuals around helping, mainly the organization piece is helping organizations to get the best out of them. So it's all to do with employee engagement, well-being, mental awareness, all of that great stuff. So that's one thing. The second thing I do is I'm a huge, and we'll no doubt touch on this as we go through the podcast, Dan, but I also do a lot of work with men's mental awareness. So I also run men's days, and I've actually also started doing sessions with my wife. So we're doing kind of mini retreats, as I would call them, focusing on breath work, sound, cacao, cold water therapy, all of that great stuff. So they're the two key things that I do as a job. As I've also mentioned, my wife. So I live with my wife, Nikki, and our amazing little Cocker Spaniel who keeps us fit and healthy. I've got two kids, almost 18 and 15, and a stepdaughter who's 18. And then my favorite crisp, I've got two, Dan. So
Okay.
the first one is my go-to is really dull and boring, but my go-to is ready salted.
You're not the
Very
first person to
often.
say ready salted,
No.
James. You are not the first person.
However,
Yeah.
and whether we touch on this or not today, I don't know, but I do a lot of running. So if I've just done a long run, my go-to after a long run is salt and vinegar. But only really after a long run or a lot of exercise do I go for salt and vinegar.
Why?
I don't really know, because you'd assume ready salted would be better for the salt, but it's just one of those things. Salt and vinegar after a long run. It's just, I think it's just it feels like it's replenishing something in my system. I'm not sure it is. I mean, probably someone should say I have a protein shake after a run rather than a packet of crisps. But yeah, it's just my treat, I suppose, afterwards.
Okay. That's fair enough. Yeah, you are not the first person that has said ready salted. The range is really quite spectacular, and I'm not going to reveal it now, but one of the first people that I asked that question of in this series gave exactly the same answer as the one that I would have listed, and it's niche and no longer available.
Oh,
So I was pleasantly surprised that it's not just me that is hankering after this other brand of crisp.
I'm trying to think what's been discontinued now.
Well, I tell you what, that is a trailer. If that doesn't get you going back through all of the episodes to
Yeah.
work out which pack of crisps it was we were talking about, I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
will. Excellent. Thank you, James. It's great to have you on the pod today. Before we jump into the questions, I just want to explain for the people who haven't heard an episode of Good Enough Chats before, people who know James, for example, the way that this show is structured is the same for every single episode. So there are 5 core questions that form the basis of our conversation. And that means that James or any other guest has a chance to prepare as much or as little as they want to coming into the conversation for what can obviously be a challenging conversation to have at times. So he can prepare as much or as little as he wants to. That's fine. But that is the extent to which the conversation is structured. So we're not scripting this. I have deliberately told James I don't want to know about his story until we hit record. So what you're going to hear is my genuine reaction to what James says for the first time. And that's very deliberate because what I want to try to create with this is an atmosphere of an informal chat that you might have with a mate. And let's just say you're down the pub with your mate and you've had a couple of beers and you've got something on your mind, and that's the point at which you say, I've got something I want to talk to you about. And the mate's not expecting it, but you're going to get the mate's genuine reaction to that as well, right? So it's all done very deliberately, but very much with my guests' psychological safety at the heart of everything that we do. So that being said, James, question number one is, why are you here today talking about your lived experiences of mental health?
So it kind of goes back to what I do. And I look at the world, and specifically men's mental health. I look at the world of men's mental health, and I kind of talk about this all the time. The statistics around it aren't changing. In some cases, they're getting worse. And because of that, it's such an important topic, because if I reflect back on my own personal journey, which we're going to go into, Dan. So when I reflect back on my personal journey, nobody knew about my personal journey. No one knew what was going on inside. No one knew what was happening to me. And that was the main reason why that was the case, was because I never shared it. I never talked about it. So the reason why I'm here and I'm quite happy to share this is because if it encourages one man to go and pick up the phone to their mate, as you talked about, or to say, hey, can we meet up for a walk, or can we do something? I need to talk to you. And that conversation helps that person, or even saves a life. That's why I'm here, because I want to try, and I'm quite happy to share my story. And by me sharing my story, hopefully it will resonate with somebody, and they might pick up the phone to me because they don't know me, or they might pick up the phone to you, Dan, because they don't know you, and say, can I talk to you? And that's the reason I'm here, because I want to help as many people as I can. And therefore, by spreading the word and sharing my story, I'm hoping it encourages men to talk up, or find an avenue that works for them, that stops them getting to a point of that what I would call that breaking point. And that breaking point is often the point where it can be too late.
Yeah. And that's very much aligned with why this platform exists. I went through my own struggles, and I made a decision at a very particular point in that to answer the question, how are you doing, completely honestly. And the way that shifted the conversation and how much more helpful that became because I decided to talk openly had a massive impact on how I felt about myself, realizing that I was no longer, it wasn't just me. I wasn't isolated. It wasn't just me that was feeling like this or that had ever experienced this. And it was the first step, I think, towards recovery from that. So very much aligned on that, James, and appreciate you being here. One of the other things that I think is really important is, if you haven't experienced challenges with mental health, I think there is a tendency, especially as men who just like to run in and fix things really quickly, there's a tendency to think that once you've had the problem and you've dealt with it, everything's rosy and no more problems forevermore. Now, you and I both know that it's not linear. So one of the next question I always ask people is, how's your last week been?
My last week actually has been pretty good. I'll be honest. And if I may, and I don't want to bend the rules too much for you, Dan, but if I may, I'm going to take you back to the week before.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
go for it.
because so if you were to ask me how the last 2 weeks have been, it's kind of a bit of a different story. So a couple of weeks ago, I actually went on. I decided to book on a training course, and that training course was for me to become and I'm going to call a certified cacao ceremony facilitator, um, which which when I was driving to Derbyshire for that week, I was driving with a lot of dread, anxiety, nervousness, because it wasn't just a course around um, becoming this certified facilitator. I knew that that course was going to challenge me, push me, and probably unearth some stored trauma, which we all carry, but some stored trauma in my body. So actually, when I was driving, I felt all of these sensations were coming back up again. And look, I've been through a lot, so there were certain things that I did to support me in that. And the week was an absolutely amazing week, but it did take me on a journey. And it goes back to what you said, just because you feel like you've overcome something, it doesn't stop there. And, I'm an individual that wants to go deeper, wants to get to the root cause of some of this stuff that has caused me challenges and some of my mental awareness issues in the past. I want to deal with that stuff. So the course was really great from that perspective. Subsequently, since that course, I've come home, dropped back into the reality of life, which you always have to do with these things. And it was a little bit rocky to start with because I was still dealing with stuff from the course. But actually, the good news, and when you say the last week has been good, actually I've now processed that stuff. It's grounded me. It's made me feel a lot stronger and a lot more motivated about things. And the last week's been really exciting for me because I'm looking at taking some of the work I'm doing with Engage to Succeed to the next level. So I've had lots of conversations around the development of software and product and kind of building it and taking it to the next level. So the last few days have been really quite exciting for me because it's about growth. Get to a point where I'll start feeling a bit nervous again as we start taking that to market. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But
Yeah.
overall, it's been good. But I just wanted to emphasize that point that you were talking about from a linear perspective, just because often you deal with things doesn't mean they disappear. And that came up for me a few weeks ago when I was driving to Derbyshire for the course that I was going on.
Excellent. Thank you. That's really important. And it also, that throws up the first additional question that I think is worth asking. So I consider myself cacao ignorant. And I'm sure / hope I'm not the only person that is hearing this that is cacao ignorant. So I'm a natural cynic. So can you explain to me in simple terms what it is and why someone might want to consider doing it?
Yeah, sure. Now you're testing my memory now from the facilitator training. Yeah, look, it's a really simple. So cacao is it's classified as a plant medicine. Okay, so and look, there are all different types of plant medicines, and people have probably heard about all sorts of different plant medicines, from ayahuasca to psilocybin and psychedelics and mushrooms, and all the way through to cacao. So cacao is a ultimately, it's a plant medicine that's grown in tropical countries. I was on the full power cacao training that was set up by a guy called Liam Brown. he imports his from Venezuela. And ultimately, it was it, it was it was produced. It's produced today as it was kind of thousands of years ago, and it was produced thousands of years ago, and it was almost like the luxury of drinks, a little bit like champagne is today with the aristocrats. It was like that in the olden days. Um, and actually, if you look at the history of cacao, that's where chocolate came from. So there's a whole long story I could tell you about the cacao itself, but what does it actually do as a plant medicine? What it does is it helps to regulate your nervous system. It actually is a heart opener. So it calms that nervous system down. It allows you to think more rationally. And it opens up that heart to allow you to kind of go inward more and understand what's going on. So if I was to liken it to, but it's also, let me just also say, it's also a bit of a stimulant. Lots of people compare cacao to coffee and say, well, what's the difference between cacao and coffee? You know, coffee is the go-to morning drink for, I don't know, 80, 90% of the population, probably. What happens with coffee is when you have coffee and the caffeine in coffee, you get a massive spike of kind of almost endorphins, adrenaline. It wakes you up, right? And that coffee will be a massive spike and a massive drop. So most people have a coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then by the time they get to 11, they will be wanting another one, right? And there's no, got to be careful what I say here because people will go, that's not true, James. There's no benefits to coffee, right? It doesn't, other than it's being a stimulant and wakes you up, there's not really what else it does to you. Cacao, on the other hand, is full of antioxidants, magnesium, loads of great stuff. So actually, it's more like it can almost be more like a drink that adds minerals and goodness to your body. Also, what it does, it's a slow release. So it will take you like coffee in the morning, you'll have a coffee and within a couple of minutes, you'll feel the effect of it. If you have a cacao in the morning, it will take longer for you to feel the effect of it, like 15, 20, 25 minutes, depending on how much you have. But it will last a lot longer and it'll be a slow release. So rather than you get a massive spike and a massive drop, you'll get a slightly longer spike, but then it will last for sort of 4 or 5 hours. So it helps you regulate that. And that's where the regulation of the nervous system comes in, Dan, because it really helps to calm you. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you centered. And you can use it. And I say use it, you can drink it either as a morning drink, just as a way to stabilize you, or you can, and you'd have a smaller dose, or you can have a bigger dose, like 50 grams of cacao, and you can use it in a ceremony. So you can use it in conjunction with breath work, with sound, with mantra, with meditation, all of these other bits and pieces. And what it will do with a higher dose is it will open up your heart, it will open up your body, your mind, to allow you to kind of process and deal and heal ultimately. So it's quite a long answer to what is cacao, but it's if anyone is interested, obviously I would advocate full power cacao. It's amazing. If you go and look up full power cacao, there's a whole host of information on their website which will help you to understand it. But it's fascinating. So that was a couple of weeks ago that I went, and I've not had coffee since.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you. That's we're here not quite like the BBC to inform, educate, and entertain, but I'd like to think that that's done something of an education job. Certainly has for me. Okay, so we talked about the last couple of weeks and how those have been for you, but let's turn now to your mental health journey. And I always couch this question to with people and say, it's up to you where you start this. If you and trace back this to your childhood and you want to go there, go there. If this is something that's in the last few years, go there. It's for you to answer as you see fit. But what I really want to focus on here is what became the catalyst, I guess, for your challenges, and how have things shifted since that point?
Okay, so look, I'm going to touch on my childhood to a degree, because I think these things don't happen overnight often, and this has come from a lot of the work that I've done and a lot of the research I've done around various things. So I was brought up as in a single parent household for many years. My mum, my dad wasn't around from the day that I was born, and my mum took care of me and my sister until probably about the age of 7, when I had a stepdad that joined the scene, and he was there all the way through to when I went to university, and then unfortunately they split up. So there was a lot of growing up for me. There was a little bit of an absence of a father figure, and when I was at school, we just touched on cacao as an example, Dan. When I was at school, I never really felt like I fitted in. Back in, I'm 50, right? So take it back to 40 odd years ago. You just went to school and no one ever talked about anything that was like healing or things that most would classify as weird. Alongside that, I am slightly dyslexic. I always struggled at school. I didn't really enjoy it. I couldn't sit still. Some probably say I'm a bit autistic on the spectrum. But none of this stuff was recognized when when I was growing up. So I muddled through school ultimately. And where I put a lot of my focus was activities outside of school, because that was kind of where I felt safe, and that's where I kind of enjoyed being out and about and active. So I think over my childhood and growing up, I pushed a lot of trauma down. I stuffed a lot of stuff down. I didn't really want to look at it. I didn't really fit in. But hey, look, the reason I mention that is because that is now coming out of me now, and since and I'll talk about my story in a bit more detail, but since I've started, let's call it on the road of recovery over the last few years, a lot of this stuff has come out, which has really helped me to develop and grow as a person. That's why I mention it now.
Yeah.
But, the kind of the story kind of started, if you like, probably about 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago. I can't put a pinpoint on the exact date of where things started going wrong. But he went to university, came out of university, got a job, worked through the career ladder, got stuck into the career ladder, as most people do when they're in their 20s, focus very much on driving your career forward. I just want to earn money. I want to, and this is part of society today that says, you must go to work, you must earn money, you must have a house, you must have a car, you must develop, you must grow, etc., etc. And that's and I called it the trap. That's the trap that I fell into. And when you start earning and you start building and you start growing, kind of you chase the next thing, you chase the next thing, you chase the next thing. And ultimately what happened was, over the years of work, I ended up kind of losing myself to a degree. I didn't really feel like I was James. I was, and this kind of stems back to the school thing, really. I started putting masks on. I started trying to be somebody that I wasn't. I started trying to, chase the next best thing. I wanted to have the next best car and all those other bits and pieces. And I had a number of masks that I was wearing, and I still talk about this today with some people that says, there are loads of things. There's there's the work mask, which is the easy one to say, like, I'm a successful person. This is my job. I'm a head of, or whatever, a director of, and, I'm earning all this money. Great. Whoa, there's your work mask. You go into work. You don't tell anyone about what's going on outside of work. You just get on and crack on with work. So that's one mask. You might have like a friend mask where, everyone looks at you and goes, oh, you've got a good job. Yeah, I've got a good job. Look at me. I've just been promoted, right? So there's your friend mask that says you want to be felt like you're part of a friendship group, so you can fit in. There's then a family mask. I have got 2 kids, as I explained, and you put a mask on for your kids when your kids are around, because and for me, I was working full time. So every time I walked in, the kid mask would come on, and I'd kind of make them feel loved and all that great stuff. And so there was a kid mask, a dad mask, whatever you want to call it. There's a relationship mask, that, to the outside world, you have this the 2.4 kids scenario. Okay, so you have this relationship mask of everything's great. I'm in this marriage and everything's great, and we've got a nice house, and we've got all the bits that we need to, and we go on holidays and all that great stuff. And then there's the other one that I talk about, which is the health and fitness mask. 2009, I decided to take it upon myself that I was going to push myself physically, and loved doing triathlons. So I decided to do my first Ironman. And in 2009, I completed my Ironman, and that was a bit of like, that was a health and fitness mask. And all this stuff, actually, when I look back on it today, a lot of it was all about feeding my own personal ego. And my personal ego was the thing that kind of took me out of being James and into being somebody else. And that's really where, kind of, when I look back, it was sort of 2014, 2015. I couldn't cope with all of these masks, Dan. You start getting cracks in them, and you start it wears you out, and you get worn out by it. And those cracks really started to appear from a multitude of different things, and I suppose the one that really cracked, or started to crack, was the relationship, the family. My life was very much about work. I was chasing the next big job. I was, and again, all my friends were like, oh, James is okay. He's been promoted. He's earning a 6-figure salary. He's got a nice house, got a nice car, going on nice holidays. And what started, these masks started cracking. And it got to a point eventually where my first marriage just blew up and collapsed. I wasn't happy in it. We were arguing a lot, usual kind of scenario. And I'll be honest, it was completely my fault, and it broke down beyond repair, fundamentally. And that was probably, this was one of those big triggers that started that sort of spiral for me. I moved out of the family home, couldn't necessarily afford to go and rent anywhere, or certainly couldn't afford to go and buy anywhere, because we still had the family home that I had to pay for, because I was the main breadwinner. Luckily, we had a caravan. So I make a bit of a joke about it now, but I was the global head of talent acquisition for a 6,000 people business, earning a 6-figure salary, living in a caravan for 6 months, because that's all I could afford to do. Now, in these scenarios, the kids loved it, right? They were 7 and 10 at the time, and every other weekend they felt like they were going on holiday because they were seeing dad in the caravan. But it was quite a depressing time, working from a caravan, or going home to a caravan, and going, what the actual is going on. So eventually I sorted myself out. I was in another relationship. I can't say that was necessarily, that started having cracks in it. And I was ended up living probably the best part of 140 140 miles away from the kids. So every other weekend I was driving 140 miles on Friday morning, and then 140 miles Friday evening, and then again, like 280-mile round trip on a Sunday evening to drop them back. And again, that's where things really started to kind of eat away. Like, I still talk about it now, and people at the time, no one knew what was going on inside. And when I say nobody knew what was going on inside. Um, and it was February 2020, just before, that wonderful time of life where everyone was locked down. But it was February 2020, and it all just became. When I talk about this hitting rock bottom, this was my absolute rock bottom. I'd tried everything. Previously, I'd have kind of chasing the next thing, doing another Ironman, doing something else, buying a car, whatever it was. I'd chase these things, and they just wouldn't make any difference to my life, because inside I was hurting, and inside I couldn't see a way out. So it was February 2020, and I was driving up from the West Country to go and collect the kids who live in Sussex. And it was a murky February morning. I was being up at like 5:30 to get round the M25 to get to kind of Kent to do my day's work before everyone else kind of got up. And I got onto the M25. I was driving around the M25. It's about 7:45 in the morning. It was busy. The rain was pouring down. I was sitting there going, what am I doing with my life? This is just ridiculous. I'm desperately unhappy. I'm depressed. I'm going through a divorce, which was quite honestly horrendous. Saw no sign of getting anything out of it. And the thing that just went through my head, Dan, was the world would be a better place without James in it. So my foot hit the accelerator, the road cleared up, my foot hit the accelerator. I sped up to about 95 mile an hour on the M25, with the intention of just going straight into the central reservation and trying to flip the car and end it all. Luckily for me, my mum called. And that was the first time in 5-6 years where I actually managed to open up. And we just spent probably an hour and a half on the phone. And there was shouting, there was screaming, there was tears, there was anger, there was frustration, there was everything, just literally everything poured out of my body. And she just sat there and listened. Yeah. And that was it. And I sat there in the car after putting the phone down to her, and half an hour later, I was like, do you know what? My life needs to change. I need to change. This isn't working for me. This isn't working for anyone. And the world is a better place with James in it. James just needs to go back and do some soul searching and go inwards and find out what needs to change to bring him back to life. And that was the start of my journey. Pretty crappy time, because kind of about 5-6 weeks later, we went into lockdown, and I was still living with an old partner at the time, not particularly happy where I was, and I had to try and figure all that out in conjunction with being locked down. But I just had to move, and that was I think it was April. By the time I got to April and moved out, I was back nearer, closer to the kids. I'd started to figure out, that was the first thing that I needed to do, was to move closer back to the kids and kind of give myself the space and the freedom to be able to figure myself out. And that was the starting point for it. one of the Engaged to Succeed, which is the business that I now have. I have a model that I developed years and years ago that I'd done nothing with, and that model, one of the levels on that model is stuck in a rut, and everyone can resonate with those words, stuck in a rut. And that's where I was. My performance in my life, work and personal life, was rock bottom. I had no passion at all for anything, and was, just defaulting to the usual thing of, I'll just go and get drunk because it's easier, because it just numbs the pain, or I'll overeat because it numbs the pain. And I dusted that model off, and that was the starting point for me, that said, what do I need to do to shift? And I couldn't shift from a job perspective because I needed to earn the money still. And so I shifted from what have I let go in my life that is important to me, that that's going to help me rebuild myself. And I was overweight. I hadn't run for ages. So I started running. And that was the freedom that I needed to kind of just give me the space to kind of start figuring stuff out, and lose weight, get healthy, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the starting point. That was, 6 years ago. And kind of, it took me a good year to kind of get back into a routine, start kind of getting things figured out. But then since then, it's like all these things start off slow. And I know you will probably touch on this at nearer the end, but it wasn't about going out there and cranking full pelt. I'm going to go and run a marathon. It was about starting slow, taking small steps, a day, a week, a month at a time, and slowly building up to then start becoming me again. So yeah, that was the story, Dan.
James, thank you so much for sharing that. That's incredibly powerful. There's a point in which you said that kind of caught my attention, which is you had that thought process where you thought, I've tried everything, it's not working, and that's the point at which you put your foot down on the accelerator. Your mum called, stopped you in your tracks. But even though it sounds like, even though you didn't know what the answer was at that point, it sounds like there was a moment of recognition at that point that maybe you hadn't tried everything, that it was worth going back and trying something else, or working out what needed to be done to help you fix this.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like, it's just little things that kind of stick in my head. Like, I would say I can't remember the whole conversation, but there's snippets that kind of come back to me, and it's just things like, don't be so stupid, James. Your kids need you. And they do, right? And we often say that, it's best just to walk away and forget, or whatever, or but actually there are people around. Often there are people around you that do need you, and you just don't. When you're in that state, you just don't recognize it, and you don't realize it. Again, I can reflect back on it because of what happened, and I've helped my kids grow, and I cherish them, and I'd always be there for them, and I can be there for them because I'm still here. But if I wasn't here, then I couldn't be there for them. And so sometimes the hardest thing to do is the best thing to do. and it is. It's about I talk a lot about this, obviously, and um, it's about being brutally honest with yourself. And I think that's the key. That says you think you've tried and everything, but are you being brutally honest with yourself? Is there anything else that you can try? Is there anything else you can do to take a step forward? And that might just be one step forward, but it's that one step forward that stops you from not potentially not being here.
There's another dimension to that honesty, though. I think so. Part of my own challenges have been around what I now understand to be clinical perfectionism. So everything is black and white, and if I'm not going to be brilliant at something right from the start, why bother doing anything at all? You can imagine how self-defeating that cycle becomes, right? So when you say honesty, I think there's a difficulty in being realistic when you're feeling that low as well, because my brain tells me that my very realistic and honest assessment of the situation is I'm a sack of shit and I'm worthless. And there isn't another way for me to think about that because it's all true. It takes something to be able to cut through that way of thinking and actually go, oh, hang on a minute. That's not true. It might feel like it's true, but it's not actually true. And you kid yourself, don't you? Your brain convinces you, because the mind is an arse, that your feelings are facts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not true.
No, it's not.
And being able to the fact that your mum called you at that moment, we can read that as a signal from the cosmos.
Yeah.
A very happy coincidence. It's brilliant, but if that's a thing, and having that conversation at that moment helped you not to necessarily work out what it was that you needed to do, but just course corrected your thinking at exactly the time that it actually had to happen.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
It
is.
There's another guest on the show, and I won't do his story justice, but he found himself in a very similar position. His name's David Eakins. David went through a series of incredibly challenging situations, and he decided that he was going to take his own life. And he got to the point where he'd actually climbed over the barrier on the bridge and was standing on the wrong side of it over the train line, waiting for the train. And he realized, in just a spark of inspiration, that he had a card in his wallet from a psychotherapist who had told him that because of all the stuff that he'd gone through, he was going to need that card. It was going to suddenly happen with him. And he remembered at exactly the right moment. And he came back off the bridge and he called them, and they knew exactly who he was. It had been 6 months. They knew exactly who he was. And that literally changed the course of his life, having that sort of intervention. And you said at the outset of why you're here, talking about your experiences. It's really important that guys hear that there is another side to those lows, because it's so hard to believe that there is another side, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I describe it to people as you just need to believe that there is a light, even if you can't see it. So maybe you're in the tunnel, but the tunnel's doing this, it's winding and you can't see the light, but it's still there. As long as you know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, even though you can't see it,
Yeah.
that is enough to keep you moving forward, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, totally. And like since that day, it wasn't like it was the floodgates opened and I went round and I told everybody about it. I still kept everything very internal and very private. And I, again, I would say that this is where I see quite a lot of men that are challenged. At the time in 2020, again, I'll go back to what my job. I was doing a big job. I had a big team. I was earning a lot of money, and to the outside world, and let's call it materialistic world, I was still doing very well. And I wouldn't allow, even though I'd had this breakdown, I wouldn't allow that to influence kind of the job, the work that I was doing. And even after 2020, I still continued on chasing that next big job. And that didn't stop. It kind of was still there because it was like drilled into me that's what I should do.
Mm.
But there are so many things that have happened since then that also make that I'll tell you one story quickly, Dan, and then you can by all means follow through with some questions. But so this happened in the February, 18, I think it was 18 months later. Might have been 2.5 years later, actually. I lose track of dates. It might have been 2.5 years later since that day. It was 2.5 years later. One of my best friends, his father passed. And there's three of us that kind of have really close friends that have been friends for many, many, many years. And I said to the other friend, maybe we should organize a weekend, just a weekend. We'll go camping, get a fire pit, usual kind of things. Let's just, because actually he needed a bit of a pickup. He was very close to his father and it was a big thing that his father had passed away. So anyway, we organized this weekend, and we were having a great time. And actually, we all sat there, and I turned around to one of my mates and went, "You're right," and he was like, "Yeah, I'm good. This is exactly what I needed." And we almost then went around this little sharing circle. There's only three of us, but we almost went around this circle of, "You're right. Yeah, I'm all right." And they came to me and went, "You're all right," and I went, honestly, not really. And this, again, it comes back to the, just because you deal with it doesn't mean it stops. And 2.5 years later, since that day in February 2020, and it might have been, I'm trying to think now of dates. It might have even been 3.5 years later, Dan. But anyway, a long time after that event, I actually had the balls to tell them what happened. And these are my two closest friends that I've known since I was like, one I went to university with and one I went to school with. And they just looked at me and went, "What?" And I went, "Yeah." And I said, "It's still a struggle now." And it's still struggle now. And they were like, "Why on earth didn't you tell us? Why on earth didn't you feel like you could pick up the phone to either one of us and say, 'Guys, I'm struggling'?" And I said, "Because you both see me as this strong person, and almost that, I'm the person that they come to when they're struggling rather than the other way around." And often men, and this is why I say this, tell this story, often as men, especially men that are successful in their careers or they have this outward success to life, really, really struggle to actually say, "I'm hurting." And they don't know how to have that conversation with people, even their best mates they've known for like 30 years, 20 years. They still don't know how to have that conversation because they don't want to show weakness. They don't want to show vulnerability. They don't want to show that they are suffering. And having done lots of research in this, you kind of sit there and go, "Yeah, I get it, but why wouldn't you?" And I think, rewind the clock, I probably would have had more open conversations 10 years ago with these guys and said, look, I'm struggling. Can you help me? And then I would never have got to where I got to. But it's another story that says, look, as men, we're not great at this stuff. But if you're scared, you're feeling worried about having that conversation, I would urge you to have it. Because if they're your best mate, you might be met with silence because they don't know what to say, but at least you've told them that you're something's not right, and they will be there to support you. But yeah, I kept it quiet for, I think it was probably, must have been three and a half years, not 2.5 years. But anyway, it was a long time until I actually told them what happened and kind of poured my heart out of my challenges.
I think there's a couple of other things about this challenge. I think there is people worry about not having the words or not knowing what to say to explain how they're feeling. And I think that's also compounded by the fact that men have a tendency to try and rush in and offer a solution when actually what they need to do is just shut up and listen.
Yep.
And I think that's a big part of what this show is trying to do. When you were explaining your experience, I stopped myself multiple times from chipping in and talking because I'm like, no, now is not the time. There is a story that you're telling here, and I need to give you the time to tell that story rather than interrupting you and stopping the flow of that, because you need to articulate it. There is a mutual benefit here. You talking is going to help someone else when they hear it, but you talking is going to help you, because each time you do that, you are able to just work through and process it a little bit more, right? And it was raw. You could tell how raw it was for you to talk about that still years later, which is showing you that you are still processing.
Yeah.
But it's not just like, let's have that conversation and then it's all fixed, guys. That's like, let's just normalize the idea of talking about this stuff, and let's try and encourage more blokes to check in on their mates, but also when their mates do start talking, to just let them talk. You do not need to have the answers. You do not need to have a solution. You do not need to fill in the silence. Let it be. And it benefits everyone all around. I've sort of jumped slightly ahead there because the next question, which I feel we're sort of naturally going into anyway, is about the light bulb moments. This is, those moments in the recovery journey that you've been on, where the penny has suddenly dropped, and you've gone, yeah, I need to start doing that, or I need to stop doing that, or I need to really continue with this. Can you give me some examples of those kind of instances you had?
There's kind of been, I think this goes back to the start of the conversation, that there is not a linear process here. I think you naturally have light bulb moments at various points along any kind of recovery process, Dan.
Yeah.
So of course the first light bulb moment was February 2020, when I was like, shit, I need to sort my life out. The second light bulb moment for me was probably fairly close after that said, what have I let drop from my life that I need to bring back into my life? Because they're the bits that are going to bring me joy and happiness. And for me, that was like, I needed to get fit again. And so I did sign up for a 10K or a half marathon. I signed up for an ultra marathon because that's just my crazy brain of pushing myself to my limits. But
that is a very common story that I hear from men. They go, "Well, yeah, yeah. So I got into running a bit, and I thought I'm just gonna go and run the marathon des Sables." So, but you couldn't do a 5K 3 months ago. What? Just why? I mean, we do set these silly targets for ourselves, don't we? Which
Yeah, and part
great and
of
amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing sense of achievement if you do it, but it can also be very dangerous if you don't do it, because then you
yeah.
start to eradicate your sense of self-worth, don't you?
So part of me doing that was because I'd done 4 Ironmans already, and so I wanted to do something to push myself. But part of the reason for doing that, and this was sort of the light bulb moment that said, I can't just go and run 107k round the Isle of Wight. So I need to have, one of the things that had dropped for me was routine. So I need routine, I need a plan, and I need something to keep me focused. That
Yeah.
that every month I take a step forward, I take a step forward, I take a step forward. So that was part of the reason why I do it. Um, I mean, I think what's the biggest, some of the other stuff that's happened since, like, and I'll tell this story very quickly because it's, my mum turned around to me when I was chatting to her the other day, and she said, "Would you ever believe, James, if I told you 10 years ago that you would be um, running men's days, you would be doing healing on people, that you would be giving up coffee and drinking cacao, that you would be wearing beads around your neck, that you wouldn't be thinking about the next fast car that you wanted to buy, that you wouldn't be earning your 6-figure salary, you'll be setting up your own business, that you would be waking up every morning and doing half an hour meditation, followed by yoga, followed by journaling, and then going and getting on with your day." She said, "Would you believe me if I told you that?" And I went, "No, I wouldn't, Mum." And I don't think anyone would. Um, and the reason I say that is because it's been a journey for me. You know, there was a big light bulb moment in 2023 for me, where I was global director of talent acquisition for Capita, massive role, team of 250 people, all around the world, working crazy hours. I love the job. And it was a massive transformation job for me, and I really enjoyed it. But that in 2023, I had this kind of light bulb moment of, there has to be more to life than, for me anyway, there has to be more to life than this corporate slavery, as I call it. Um, and I made a big decision to go, I want to follow my dreams. I want to follow my passion. I want to set up Engage to succeed and do something with this. And I want to help other people to love their life more every day. And so 2023 was a massive, massive light bulb moment for me, where I gave up the corporate world and I walked away from a big job, big salary, to start this journey. And that was a massive light bulb moment, followed by 2024, going on my first weekend course away, where I did a breathwork and cold water therapy weekend, really pushing myself out of my comfort zone, having not really done anything like that. And that was only in 2024, which is only a few years ago. And then since then, everything's kind of accelerated for me from a personal development perspective. But yeah, I think, the big light bulb moments were clearly 2020, February 2020, when I hit rock bottom and I had to change. 2023, giving up the corporate job, and then 2024, pushing myself to do something, and that was completely out there and different. And I've been on, I do a lot of kind of healing, sound healing work. I've been on sound healing sessions. I've been on breathwork sessions. And this whole space of what I would call the spiritual space, per se, or lots of people would call the spiritual space, it can be a very difficult thing for a man, because you go to these, like, I go to things with my wife, and sometimes I'm the only guy there. 20 people, 19 women, and one guy, and that's me. And I love it, so I don't care. But there is this big world again where it's not a very masculine thing to do. But the guys that I've met that are at these places are phenomenal, and they all have very similar stories to me, and to you, Dan, and to the people that you're interviewing, and they're finding a different path. And that is the cosmic universe that's kind of pushing them to go down this road. So yeah, there's sort of some light bulb moments, but it has to be. It was step by step, and I will keep reiterating that it's step by step. It's not big, powerful, bang, I'm healed.
No.
Woo! It's if you hit rock bottom, or you're in that spiral, or in that tunnel, and you're not sure how to get out of it, that's where those light bulb moments come. But they're not massive. They're small little. Oh, there's a little light there. There's a glimmer there. There's another one over there. I'm just going to keep following these little glimmers of light, and eventually those glimmers become light, because you're almost healing yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about that, because I have I don't know, maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on certain experiences that I've had. But I have experienced light bulb moments that have suddenly made me go, "Oh, shit, that's quite big." And it's always come through moments of reflection, not necessarily instantaneous. Usually after I feel like I've had a light bulb moment, and then I've ruminated on it for a couple of days, and then the actual light bulb moment hits me. I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty seismic." So I had one of those in October last year, October 25. I was absolutely ready for this moment. For context, business, being self-employed, my business, chiefly because of the space between my ears, had been pretty crap for 18 months, 2 years. And I felt like I'd tried lots of different things to influence that, but fundamentally, I wasn't enjoying my work,
Yeah.
which meant I started to believe that I wasn't very good at my work, which meant I really struggled to have any inclination to go and get more of it, because I didn't believe that I was going to be any good at doing it and I wouldn't enjoy it. And so this,
Yeah.
again, it's one of those cycles that just kind of hit me. And I had a conversation with somebody who spotted something in me, and the outcome of that conversation, because it was exactly the conversation I needed to have exactly when I needed to have it, was a realization that the stories that I'd been telling myself about how much I was in control of what was happening to me and all this kind of stuff were wrong. And that actually it was my perception of them rather than reality, the facts versus feelings thing again.
Yeah.
And that has set me on a path which has been transformational, is overstating it, but it has fundamentally changed the way that I think about and feel about what I do for work, which has then given me the license to go and reconsider that, reposition it, find new energy, new interest, which, funnily enough, is corresponding to more people being interested in talking to me about what I do for my work.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right to say to people that it's not going to be a sudden boom moment for people. But I just wanted to kind of set that that contrasting experience, because granted, it took years and years of therapy and reflection to get to that understanding of myself. But when it did hit, it was like oh my God, why didn't I realize this 6 years ago? That would have been helpful, but it's here now, and it's working for me. Um, but sorry, I derailed things slightly there, but we are at question 5. This has been an amazing conversation. Question 5 is, if somebody is listening to this discussion now and it's resonating with them, they find themselves in a similar position at the moment. Um, Based on your experience, what's the most important thing that that person can do?
So I've touched on it a few times through the conversation, Dan. For me, and you don't have to be rock bottom for this to take this advice. Ultimately, you can be in a good position and still take this advice if you want to, or if you're starting to feel a bit uneasy about things. Again, do the same thing. So I touched on my model that helped me to get out of my situation. One of the things that when you're struggling, and that level of struggling can be on a scale of 1 to 10, whether it's 1 or whether it's 10, it doesn't really matter. But whenever you're struggling, your mind will tell you you can't do something. Your mind will take over. Your mind will play tricks on you like you wouldn't believe. And that's why lots of men and lots of people in this world struggle, right? So everything, though, is a choice. And your mind, you can override your mind by making an alternative choice. And the best way to make that, to override the mind, is to make a choice to do something that you want to do, something you love to do, something that you're passionate about, something that brings a smile to your face, something that it doesn't matter what it is, but every single person listening to this will know one thing that will make them happy or that will bring them joy. The next thing you have to do is you actually have to go and do that thing. and that's where the mind takes over, right? And the mind goes, you haven't run for a year. How can you possibly go for a run? You haven't run for a year. You're going to be crap. And you're going to go out going, oh, I can still do, my PB on a 5K. No, you can't. Forget your watch. Leave that Apple Watch or that Garmin or that tracking device that you've used before. Leave it at home and just go out, get some fresh air, go for a run, read a book, mow the grass, cut down no, don't cut down a tree. I'm joking. But do something that makes you smile. Because that is the first step. Like, it has to be. The only way you're going to overcome something is by doing something that you love. If you try and do something you don't love, you're never going to do it.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing. The second thing, if I can give you two, the second thing is these are amazing things, right? Mobile phones are amazing things. Put them down. Ignore them. Put them to one side, because I can guarantee you, doesn't matter whatever state you're in, if you go onto social media, you will always see somebody that is showing you that they've got a better life than you. And what I would say is, how do you know that's true? How do you know that isn't bullshit? Because, again, I'm going back to earlier life, but we're very good at telling the world how amazing we are. And, how many times do you go on social media and you see your mates on holiday somewhere, and that's the only time they ever post anything is when they're on holiday.
Yeah.
They don't post anything any other time apart from when they're on holiday. Right. So put your phone down, ignore social media, because that can be a real drainer on you mentally, because it will tell your mind that you're not good enough, that you're not doing as well as other people. So they're the two things, try and avoid your phone and social media, because there is great stuff on social media, but there's also stuff that will drain you. But number one, just go and do something you love.
Yeah.
You know, and if I'm ever feeling down now, I will go outside and go for a walk, or a run, or find a tree and sit against the tree and pull the energy from the tree, or, sit in meditation, or go and have a cacao. Yeah. Have a cacao rather than a beer. Find an alternative, because there's, we default to stuff that actually doesn't help us. Like
Yeah.
alcohol is a depressant. If you're feeling depressed, don't drink alcohol. Drink cacao or something, water or fruit juice or something that's gonna put some nourishment in your body. But that's my biggest advice is to find something that you love, that you haven't done for a while, and go and do it. Baby steps.
Yeah. Baby steps. Funnily enough, baby steps is a phrase I use in a message with a mate of mine at the moment who he pinged me on WhatsApp, and he said he was struggling and he wasn't able to start doing anything because he could find 436 reasons not to do it. And that's exactly what I said to him. I said, draw up a list of 10 things that you're not doing at the moment that you feel like you should be doing. Pick one of them and go and do something small that's going to help you to make a bit of progress on that. Go back to the start of the list, repeat. That's it. That's all you've got to do. Baby steps all the way. Baby steps, baby steps. Progress over perfection, says the recovering clinical perfectionist.
Yeah. It's true though. Like I always say, if you can do one of your passions every day of the week, you will start loving your life more every day. Choose 3 things that you're really, really passionate about and do one of them every day of the week, and just sit back and watch the change.
You are basically, you are not, it's not quite making your own luck, but you are showing yourself that there are things worth living for. If you are doing the things that you like doing, you are reminding yourself every day that it's worth being here to do more of that.
Yep.
Right. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it?
Yeah. And keep it up, Dan. Like it's very easy. Like, so after my cacao training, they've given us a daily routine that we have to do for 30 days. And it's all about making yourself accountable. And it's all about making yourself accountable and showing up for yourself. And this is the other thing. It's about showing up for you. It's not about showing up for your mum, your sister, your brother, your mum, your partner, your wife, your kids, your uncle, your auntie, your nan, your granddad. It's not about showing up for any of them. It's about showing up for you. And this is another thing that men are very, very, very good at doing, is putting everybody else first and stepping back from yourself. So actually it's about, find some time for you, find some time for yourself, step up for yourself, make yourself accountable for something. And it doesn't have to be an hour a day. It can be 5 minutes a day, but just give yourself something to do for you. That's the key.
Yeah. Wise words. James, thank you ever so much for coming on to the podcast and having this conversation. I know this has been raw, but I think it's been incredibly valuable because of your honesty and openness in sharing that experience. And I know that one person that we talked about at the start of this is going to hear it, and it is going to help them. So thank you very much for doing that.
Pleasure.
Thank you also to our listeners and viewers of the podcast. If this podcast has resonated with you and you know people that it would be helpful to get it in front of, please share it with them. Share it with them directly with a little note to explain why you think it's important that they should listen to it. Share it across your socials so that we can get in front of more men who need to hear these conversations. You can also subscribe to the podcast. So if you listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., you can subscribe there. On YouTube. More subscriptions give us more credibility, help us to reach more people. Similarly, you can review it. You can just go straight ahead and smash 5 stars on the review. That's fine. Where you have the option to add some context to your review, apparently it doesn't matter what you say, but I would love to see nice things in those reviews. That would be appreciated as well. And last but by no means least, this show is a passion project. I will be continuing to produce these episodes as long as guys are happy to come forward and share their stories. As I'm trying to evolve this platform as well, I'm starting to invest in tools to help it, like the platform we're recording on now, the website, etc. If you'd like to support the show with a small contribution, you can now do that as well. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/good enough chats, chuck a fiver in, and that will go towards the cost of running these tools and putting this all together. Beyond that, look after yourselves, take care, and we'll be back again soon with another episode of Good Enough Chats. Cheers.